We are back. We are the Town, AM 1530, FM 102.3, WCTR. It is Talk of the Towns. Elisabeth Reiss, Washington College First Lady, is joining us, wife of Washington College President Mitchell Reiss. And so now we're going to get into a little bit of your entertainment background. And so we have a couple of pieces from your one-woman show. So
yes.
First of all, I'll talk about the show itself.
Well, it was written by a woman called Joyce Grenfell, and she wrote for radio. She wrote for the radio in the 50s and 60s, and I describe it to Americans as the female version of Bob Newhart.
Okay, and I love Bob Newhart. Very dry.
Oh, absolutely, and she observed situations that women were in. I mean, I play a mother having a conversation with a daughter. I have another sketch which the daughter is having a conversation with the mother. These were written in 1959, and honestly, Keith, you could have that same conversation now. Yeah. I mean, human nature is human nature. It doesn't change, and so the conversations are the same. And
there's a classic Bob Newhart sketch from the 50s about taking a driver's ed class.
Oh, it's a classic.
And it's brilliant.
It's a classic. Absolutely. There was another one describing how the game of baseball. I think, and the conversation, the PR with Abraham Lincoln was another sketch.
I was getting ready to mention that one. Brilliant.
It's excellent. So Joyce Grenfell, she wrote in England. She had a tie to America as she was part of the Astor family, and she would come to Virginia and visit. But she just started writing, and I loved her monologues. And I'm not a prude, but what I loved about it was clean humor, and I think clean humor is tougher to perform, and it's tougher to write. Than, you know, adding a swear word or whatever. I think it's a cheap laugh. I think if you put a swear word in it, it's really a cheap laugh. So I like her material. I've done this one-woman show in London. I did it in England. I did it in Washington. And so it's just monologues. And I thought I'd do a couple now. And
sure, we'd love to hear it.
The first one I thought I'd do is, it's called Committee. And it's a group of ladies discussing a choir meeting and an upcoming festival that they will be performing at. Except there's a problem. One of the women does not fit in vocally. So it's called Committee. Well, let's get down to business, shall we? Would you be so good as to turn off your telly, please, Mrs. Hailstone? Thank you, that's better. It's very good of you to let us use your front room. I think we're all assembled. Mrs. Brill, Miss Colch, Mrs. Pell, Mrs. Hailstone, May and me. Right, all right then, May. Let's have the minutes of the last meeting. Oh, May, you're supposed to have them in that little book I gave you. I told you last time. You're supposed to write down everything we do and say and then read it out at the next meeting, and I sign it. Well, I know we all know what we said and did, dear, but you have to write it down. That's what minutes are for. No, don't cry, May dear. Well, let's get on with the next item on the agenda, shall we? Apologies for absence. Well, you read out the excuses. Oh, May. Well, you must try and remember to bring your glasses next time. No, all right, I'll read 'em. Give 'em here and cheer up. Right, Mrs. Slope is very sorry she's caught up, she can't come. Miss Heddle's got her mother again, can't come. Lady Widmore sent a telegram. Alas, cannot be with you, devastated, can't come. Well then, as you all know, this is another special meeting of the Ladies' Choral to talk about the forthcoming festival and the county choral competition. Well, we know the date and we know the set song. Yes, we do, May. No, it's in 2 parts for ladies' voices in E flat. My bosom is a nest. It's beautiful. But of course, what we're really here for tonight is the very important question of voices in the choir. Now, we don't want any unpleasantness. Friendly is what we are, and friendly is how we are going to go on. But it's no good beating about the bush. We all know there is one voice amongst the altos that did not ought to be there. And I think we all know to whom I am referring. Now, don't think I don't like Mrs. Codlin, because I do. She's a very nice woman. Well, look how nice she is with her little car, giving us all lifts here and there. And she's a lovely lender. I mean, she lends you her books and her knitting patterns, recipes, anything. Oh, yes, but she just has this one fault. She doesn't blend. May, dear, would you be so kind as to slip out and see if I left the lamp turned off on my bike? I don't want to waste the battery, and I can't remember if I did it. Thank you, May. Ladies, I didn't like to say anything in front of May, but I must remind you that Mrs. Codlin's voice is worse than whatever May's was. And you know what happened the last time we let May sing in the competition? We were disqualified. So you see, it's a very important and very serious matter. Oh, had I? Thank you, May, dear. Yes, had I? Oh, I am a big silly, aren't I? Well, you see, ladies, it isn't as if Mrs. Codlin had a voice you can ignore. I mean, you can't drown her out. They can hear her all the way down the road, over the sopranos. Yes, over your piano, Mrs. Pell, over everything. You know, I was stood next to her at practice last week when we did The Wild Brown Bee Is My Lover. Well, when we finished, I said to her very tactfully, thinking she might like to take the hint, I said, I wonder who it is who stands out so amongst the altos. And she said she hadn't noticed. Hadn't noticed. Mrs. Brill was on the other side of her, and she said to me afterwards, didn't you, Mrs. Brill? She said the vibrations were so considerable, they made her chest hum. Well, no, I know she doesn't do it on purpose, May. Well, no, of course she didn't ought to have been let in the first place. I mean, it's ridiculous. It makes a nonsense of music. But the thing is, it was her idea, wasn't it? I mean, she founded the choir. Do you think if anyone was to ask her very nicely not to sing, it might stop her? I mean, we could let her come and stand there. Yes, Mrs. Hailstone, she does look like a singer. I'll give her that. Well, that's the annoying part. Would anybody like to ask her? Well, has anybody got any suggestions? No, May. Not anonymous letters. They aren't very nice. I wonder. May, one of your jobs as secretary is watching the handbags and the coats at the competition, isn't it? I mean, you have to stay in the cloakroom or during the competitions, don't you? Yes, I thought so. Look, May, now don't think we don't appreciate you as a secretary. We do, don't we, ladies? But would you like to resign? No, just say yes now and I'll explain it all later. Well, we accept your resignation, and I would like to propose that we appoint Mrs. Codlin secretary and handbag watcher for the next competition. Anybody second that? Thank you, Mrs. Hailstone. Any against? Then that's passed unanimously. Lovely. Oh, I know it's not in order, Mrs. Pell, but we haven't any minutes to prove it. May didn't have a pencil, did you, May? Well, I think that's a happy solution. I mean, we get rid of her and keep her at one at the same time. What did you say, May, dear? Can you sing if Mrs. Codlin doesn't? Oh, May, you've put us right back to square one.
I love the accent.
Well, thank you.